Hello everyone, sorry about the delay. Got a new camera here and I was having some technical issues. So welcome, Oliver Armstrong here. The title of this webinar is around time does not heal most emotional pain or emotional problems, sorry. And there is a misconception that time heals everything, and that if you give it enough time, sorry, just bringing up some notes here so I don't go off track. So where was I? So the misconception, it's a huge misconception that time is this thing that will heal all our problems, and unfortunately it's just not the case. You know, if it was, then therapists wouldn't be needed. And so the reason time doesn't heal, it comes down to a number of things, but essentially it's all to do with the way our brain works. So we have the primitive parts of our brain, which are responsible for the fight or flight response, our survival response. That's where the fear exists, and it's where all the emotions exist, and that's where essentially our problems exist, because problems are a problem because of the emotions, not of the content or the detail of what happened to us. So with that being the case, when you go to a therapist, or you're just talking to friends or family about what happened to you, no matter how much you talk about what happened, no matter how defined and how many times you go over the details of what happened to you, the actual emotions don't tend to release on their own. Now, this is for emotional problems of all kinds, not just relating to relationships. So you know, anxiety falls into this bracket, depression falls into this. Phobias are a prime example of how time doesn't heal emotional pain or emotional problems. So using that example of a phobia, I can recall a couple of clients, but one in particular had a phobia for 25 years. That's a long time, right? Now you'd expect that if after you know, a certain amount of time that the problem would heal, you'd expect it to happen long before 25 years. But going back to the way the brain works, the reason people have phobias, lifelong phobias, or the emotional pain of a betrayal doesn't heal itself, again, comes back to those parts of the brain. So the primitive parts of the brain, as I mentioned, are the survival parts where all of our emotions exist. Then we have the newer regions of the brain, new in evolutionary terms. You know, we've had them for, you know, our ancient ancestors I'm talking about. So we've developed these parts of the brain which allow us to use a lot of logic and reasoning. You know, this is how we're able to do mathematical equations and to be able to plan and imagine things in the future and that sort of thing. And anxiety exists in that section, as do most of our problems with regards to the detail and how it's affecting us emotionally. And the emotions come from, as I've mentioned a couple of times, that primitive part of the brain, that fight or flight part. So the reason we have the emotions, they're there to guide us. They are there to shape our reality, to shape our lives and move us in certain directions. So for example, if you have something like a traumatic event in your past, let's say in childhood, of course, what happened is not nice in that event. But the thing is, when the event is done, when it's in the past, a person that is still affected is affected by the emotions. And those emotions are coming from what's referred to as the unconscious or the subconscious mind. And it's those emotions which, as I mentioned already, make a problem a problem. So when you experience these emotions from, say, a traumatic event in childhood, you know, and it's even as an adult, people can still feel the emotions to a certain extent of what they felt in the time of the event. So the actual emotions are the problem here. I go off on tangents, so I'm trying not to do that. So I might just check in on my notes, otherwise I'll be here for about 3 hours. I can feel myself going off on a tangent. But where I was going with that is the emotions are in the primitive part of the brain. They are the reason that our problems are a problem. If you don't feel an emotion, then something is not a problem for you. For example, if you think of like your doormat or your window in your lounge, right? Most likely there's no emotional attachment to that. It's just a thought. You can create it in your mind, or it's a memory because you're recalling what it looks like. But if, and don't do this, but if you were to recall a traumatic event from your past, something, you know, that wasn't pleasant, my guess is you would feel some level of emotion. It would make you feel bad in some way. That is because it is the emotion which is causing the problem. Now, getting back on track as to time not healing that. If time did heal it, then, like I said, we wouldn't need therapists and it'd be fine. You know, you just cool, just give it X amount of time and you'll heal. Now, I hear varying ranges of time frames that people think that it takes. So a common one is people say, yeah, you know, after a betrayal or infidelity or divorce, you know, separation of some kind from where you're feeling this emotional pain, they say give it 18 months. Yep, 18 months and you'll be fine. Other people will say, you know, oh, it's half the length of your relationship. Then other people will say, you know, it'll probably take about 10 to 15 years to get over something as extreme as that. So for some people it can. Well, it's an illusion that the time heals them. But the thing is, if you work with the emotions, which I'll get to, then you can heal the emotional pain a lot faster. So this whole time will heal your pain. Certainly in my experience as a therapist, it's not true. Otherwise, people wouldn't be coming to me, because problems exist in one of two ways. We either feel something that we don't want to feel, or we don't feel something that we do want to feel. That's it, right? That's what it boils down to, any problem. And when people say, oh, you know, yeah, give it, you know, it took me 10 years and to get over what happened, and, you know, I'm good now, I've moved on. When I talk to people who have told me a similar thing, you know, through my market research or whatever kind of strategy that I'm doing to talk to people, then it comes down to asking them one question. You know, so if somebody will often say to me, yeah, you know, I went to therapy for, say, 10 years, I've talked about it, you know, I feel really good. You know, I'm happy with that. It's resolved. You know, and I'll just ask one simple question. So if you think about that briefly, not too much, but if you think about that briefly, that particular event, do you feel any emotional pain or any unwanted emotions? 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes, which means it is not emotionally resolved at that unconscious level. Now, why is it that our brain holds on to this stuff? You know, why is it that the emotional pain won't heal on its own? Again, it comes down to that primitive part of the brain. Its prime directive for our ancestors was survival. To survive and to breed and, you know, keep our genes going, and you know, and well, to survive ourselves. So what happens is when the emotions when we experience a traumatic event or some event that causes us emotional pain or unwanted emotions, that part of the mind, it doesn't use advanced reasoning, advanced logic. It works only off emotions, essentially. This is simplifying it, but it essentially works just off emotions. So we experience a traumatic event or some sort of pain. It makes us feel a certain way. So we use the example of betrayal, and betrayal is an interesting one because it's been shown, neuroscience has shown that emotional pain with things like betrayal actually utilize the same brain circuits that physical pain uses. This is why it feels like it hurts so much. So let's say with betrayal, the unconscious mind experiences this loss, and it creates this pain. And whatever that pain is for you, it's different for everyone. But the experience is literally just a pain. And then, of course, you get symptom problems like anxiety, depression, and all these other things that stem from that. But sticking with betrayal, when you feel that at the unconscious level, it's holding those emotions. And because it's prime directive, its prime goal is to survive. What it's doing by keeping those emotions around is it's protecting you, right? It may not seem like it. Consciously, logically, it just makes no sense. But unconsciously, your brain is protecting you. If you hold on to these emotions and you feel this way, it thinks then you cannot experience that pain again. You can't go through that depression. You don't have to have the crazy anxiety. You don't have to feel like you're going to be sick all the time. It comes down to that survival response, that survival mechanism of that unconscious part of us. So, and ultimately, any problem falls into this category. So, when you then focus on telling your story or giving it time, you give it 5 years, 10 years, 18 months. If nothing has been changed rather, if the emotions have not been worked with directly to be changed, then essentially nothing has changed. So those emotions are going to drive your life, your experience, all of your experiences, your thoughts, your behaviors, because it is emotions which determine thoughts and behaviors. So after a period of time, let's say somebody's experienced, and this is very common, people have experienced betrayal, and it's been 10, 15 years. They still feel the pain. Now, if time could heal it, obviously that wouldn't be the case. And looping it back, as I said, it comes down to the survival response, right? The brain is keeping you safe so that you don't experience that pain again. I'll give you anxiety, I'll give you depression so that you stay in bed, so you don't go out and meet someone and feel this all over again, right? To us, consciously and logically, it's ridiculous, right? So is a phobia of buttons, a phobia of spiders. Well, maybe not spiders, especially in Australia, but you get some pretty weird and wonderful phobias. And to most people, they seem ridiculous as well. Looking at using that example, or as a different example, I had a client who had a severe phobia of flying. Just asking them to imagine an aeroplane, they went into a full-blown panic attack, and I had to get them out of that state and calm them down. Now, to anyone looking in, that's ridiculous, right? Like, you're just imagining a plane. Why would you freak out? Okay, so you've experienced the separation from a bad relationship. Why are you still feeling it 10 years later? Okay, there's that logic and reasoning doesn't apply. It's an unconscious process, as I keep saying, and the brain, by holding on to this, is helping you survive, helping you keep alive. But then, because of the new regions of our brain, that is where the anxiety exists. Because we're feeling this way, we start to put reasoning like, oh, I must be feeling this way because, oh, maybe I need more time. Maybe I need to do this. Maybe I need to do that. Oh, it's because I didn't do this, so I need to. So that doesn't apply. Essentially, the newer region of the brain and the old primitive region of the brain has been shown through neuroscience to have essentially a breakdown in communication, so that the emotions can't directly be changed by talking and analyzing our problems. That's been shown now. So the only way then to change it is to work with the emotions. Something I want to look back to on my notes so I don't forget is people that think that, you know, after 10 years that they've healed, or 20 years, or however long it is. I already mentioned this before, but I just wanted to share this point. Is it's actually an illusion that the time has healed them. As I mentioned, you know, a long period of time can go by and people can say, yeah, I'm pretty good, that doesn't bother me anymore. Right, what happens when you think about that memory? Oh, well, you know, boom, and they're straight into it. That body language is the emotion coming up. So it's an illusion. So the way to actually resolve the emotional problems is two ways. You use more positive and far stronger emotions to resolve the negative emotions, or experiences. So I'll start with experiences, because experiences are the things that change our perception, that can change how we feel. So a prime example of this, and I'm sure you may have experienced this as well, when you are kind of nervous about doing something, or people say, you know, I'm very anxious about doing that, those nerves that you feel and the apprehension, you know, you can be worrying, you can lose sleep and all that sort of thing about doing this particular event or this particular task that you have to do. But then the experience of actually doing it, you go, huh, that wasn't so bad. Automatically, boom, that painful, rather that unwanted feeling has gone. That apprehension has gone within an instant. You know, even while you're doing that thing, you know, this isn't so bad. So experiences can change it, you know, and if we have enough experiences, we can change painful emotions. And this is where exposure therapy kind of comes in and attempts to change how people feel. You know, if you expose yourself to enough events that are safe and controlled, you will overcome that problem. Doesn't always work that way. You know, if you have someone like the client I mentioned with a severe phobia of flying, just the mere thought of an airplane, just imagining an airplane in their mind, and they freaked out. They panicked, their brain went into survival mode, they wanted to get the hell out of wherever they were. So exposure therapy in that situation, you know, it's not a good thing, right? Because the brain is not in a state to accept the correct frame of mind to experience that experience. So what you need to do then is realizing that time doesn't actually help with that either. You need to work with experiences in a positive way. So there are a number of ways you can do it, but you know, in a therapeutic context, once you have taken out the large amount of emotion, once you've resolved that, it's then mentally rehearsing the positive experiences, which the brain doesn't differentiate between real or imagined. This is why anxiety exists. We imagine something happening in the future and it causes us to feel X, Y, and Z. You know, we think about something that we need to do, we feel bad. We think of the past, we feel bad. The brain's not differentiating between what's happening right now and what's a memory, or what's a created thought or created memory. So you can utilize that in your healing process. Once you shift those negative emotions, the large, powerful negative emotions, you use the experience of, you know, let's say you've largely removed the emotions of betrayal, and you want to be in a future relationship where, you know, you're trusting that person and you feel really happy and you feel this way and you feel that way, and you don't have all these triggers that you currently do or you did. You literally just imagine it. Close your eyes and you imagine yourself in those situations, right? If you do this over a period of time, is that word again, then this will install those beliefs, install that new programming at the unconscious level. Why? Because imagination works or rather exists unconsciously. It's an unconscious process. Although we can do it and control it consciously, when we think of a shape, when we think of our phone number, when we imagine our house, these things are stored unconsciously. They're in our kind of long-term memory. We don't walk around remembering our phone number, just saying it out loud all the time. It's just there. And so we utilize the same processes that I just mentioned for moving forward in a therapeutic context. So once, so the experiential changes are one way to utilize this. The other, as I mentioned, is utilizing positive emotions. So positive emotions to knock out the negative emotions. That's really the key to this, to be able to heal. Working with emotions to change emotions is the way you heal efficiently, and it doesn't need to take time. So depending on the problem, if you get a strong enough emotion and you link it to the negative one, it will actually break that negative emotion down, and the positive one will take over. Therefore, this process can occur very, very quickly, So, and it depends entirely on the problem, whether it's an anxiety-based problem, whether it's, the emotion of betrayal, or some other unwanted or negative emotion. You build up that strong positive emotion, and then you essentially are linking it to the negative. Once you're feeling that way and you're able to process what happened, then you think about all that stuff, and it breaks down the negative way of thinking. And that's when you move on to the experiential learning, which I talked about, where you then start mentally rehearsing how you want to be different, how you want to feel different, how you want to think differently. You imagine yourself that way, and you sit with that, and you put yourself in your body, in that body that you're imagining, and you experience everything. And as I mentioned, the brain doesn't differentiate between real or imagined. So what you're imagining that you're feeling, your brain has to create those feelings for you to feel them. So it's a very, very powerful process. And it's one I utilize in a therapeutic context, but it can also be utilized for self-healing. So just looking here at my notes to make sure I've kind of gone over everything. Positive emotions and experiences. So yeah, resolving the emotions with emotions is the key. And then once that has been done, mentally rehearsing positive experiences is a surefire way to get change quickly. It doesn't need to take a lot of time. Many people who, no, actually, I won't go off on that tangent. I'll stick to the notes here, otherwise I'll be here for 3 hours. So, yeah, so just to recap, it doesn't have to take a long time to heal, right? And unfortunately, time doesn't heal most emotional problems. It can for some people, like I said, if you have the experience, and it can shift your mindset and go, huh, and then you feel differently. But for the most part, time just doesn't cut it, unfortunately. It'd be great if it did, but it doesn't. So you need to change the emotions, with positive emotions. Once you knock that out, or rather you resolve those negative emotions that way, then you mentally rehearse the experiences. So if it's a trust issue that you have, once you've changed how you feel emotionally, to a large extent, doesn't matter if it's not all gone, but once you've done the majority of it, you then imagine yourself trusting people, right? It's simple. It sounds too simple, but that's how it works. And it's not so much about the detail of what happened when it comes to talking about problems, but when you're imagining the experience, detail is key, right? You make it as detailed as possible. Again, the difference between imagining these experiences in a positive way, that's working unconsciously, and that is far different to talking about the details consciously, because there is that breakdown in communication. Very often there's just no emotional change that can occur from talking about problems. So kind of looping around now, so I think I'll wrap it up there. I hope what I've said has kind of helped in some way, and that the idea of working with emotions to change emotions makes sense, because really that is how I'm helping people get results and change very quickly. You know, I don't need to talk to people in great detail about their problems. That is what takes time. That is where it's a time hog, you know. I don't need to know all of your details about, you know, what color t-shirt was this person wearing, and, you know, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. All you need to know is how you feel. You then notice that feeling and that emotion, and you build up a more positive one, and you replace the positive with a negative, or a neutral. Neutral is still a positive feeling. You can be more neutral and it knocks out that negative feeling. Then you mentally rehearse the experience, because it's the experience and positive emotions which will change how you feel, which will change how you heal very quickly. If you'd like to know more about this, or you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments or private message me if it's something you wish to keep private. Yeah, if you'd like to know more about my approach, you can, I'll leave just let me know in the comments if you're interested, and I can send you a link, and then we can take kind of 45 minutes together on a call to discuss in more detail your situation, and you know, how we can change how you're feeling, and I can teach you multiple techniques moving forward for managing you know, any thoughts and emotions. But we basically work to knock out the major emotions, or I shouldn't say knock out, we resolve the major emotional problems, and then we do that experiential learning through various kind of therapeutic processes, all which, because they don't require detail, you're very disconnected to a large extent. So there's no re-traumatizing, there's no reliving what happened. It's not necessary. So yeah, if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments, and I can send you a link to schedule a call with me, and we'll take that 45 minutes to figure out if my approach is for you, and we will, you know, customize a way for you to heal very quickly. But I hope what I've said has made some sense and can help you move forward. Please feel free to comment or share this video if you think it can benefit anyone else. And yeah, that's pretty much all from me. And just checking my notes here one more time. Yeah, I think I covered everything. I may have repeated myself a little bit, but yeah, we'll see how we go. Thanks so much. Look forward to talking to you next time.